I'm Graham Daniel from Charles State University, and I'm here interviewing Daniel Purnell, or having a conversation with Daniel Purnell about his experience over the last 4 years of teacher education, of university life, and we're just going to discuss Daniel's journey. So Daniel, thank you for being here and coming to talk to us. First of all, I'd like to know what led you to enrol at university. What gave you that kind of interest, ambition?
I think it leads back to, my Year 10 work experience. I finished it at my school that I was at primary school, and that was only 2 weeks. And I think since then there was an ambition to become a teacher, which led me to enrol in university. I didn't think I wanted to become a teacher before that. I think I had another career. I think it was that work experience that started the ambition.
So back in Year 10?
Year 10 work experience.
Okay. And did that change your approach to the final 2 years of schooling? And
very much so. It had a very, very big influence on what subjects I completed during the HSC. But also the amount of effort that I put into the HSC, knowing that it would lead to university to get the degree.
The goal of university then, it was connected to being a teacher.
Yes.
Were there role models that you were looking at in your life?
Definitely past teachers.
Mm-hmm.
They were probably the main inspiration. A little bit hard to find inspiration for people that have gone to university because in my family, immediate family anyway, I'm the first university student to have gone through.
Okay.
So mainly past teachers, both high school and primary school teachers.
Mm-hmm. And enrolling in a university that's nearby was important to you.
Yes.
What were some of the challenges for you in attending university?
So getting here some days was quite difficult. Mm-hmm. There's been a lot of roadworks happened over the past 4 years. But even simple things as having to maintain the car, having to put petrol in it was a necessity to achieve the ambition of becoming a teacher.
And how did you support that?
I was lucky enough before university to do a traineeship at a club in Lithgow during that gap year, and it led me to a part-time job.
Okay, so you worked. What kind of hours do you think you were working a week in paid work?
The hours varied, but being a part-time employee, it ranged anywhere between 15, 20 hours all the way up to 30 or 35 hours a week, roughly. Because of the industry, the hours were a little bit all over the place, and different times of day, but that was just a rough figure.
Yeah, and so like a lot of students in contemporary times, high work hours, you were doing a full-time course which involves a lot of reading, a lot of assignment preparation time as well as the attendance. How did you find that balance?
Work were very, very good about it. They had a number of university students working there, so they were very, very, very happy to accommodate, especially on prac as well. If I needed time off, they were able to give me time off, either paid or unpaid, whatever, but they were very, very accommodating. The balance at times was hard, taking in the amount of hours that I was doing. But I think that I did okay, reasonable.
You certainly did. You've completed in minimum time the usual 4 years for the course, and that in itself is an achievement. Not a substantial number of students, but certainly a sizable portion of students don't complete in the 4 years because they've got all of these extra demands on time, emotions, other demands in terms of personal lives. So you've mentioned the financial, practical things that you found challenging, but were there other personal or other challenges in your immediate life?
Well, as life goes on, there are things that happen. Family members passing. Also, there was a period during the middle of the degree where I didn't necessarily think that I didn't want to become a teacher. It was just a motivation factor. Trying to get finished assignments, there was definitely a motivational factor. And there were a couple of hiccups in regards to finishing subjects on the way. But I was able to overcome them reasonably.
Right. Well, which leads us to the next question, which is looking at the things that supported you. So the kinds of things that you've talked about, the kinds of things that students experience on their way through that present hurdles. You must have had some support. So what kind of things did you find supported you?
Definitely being able to live at home. I think that if I was to move out of home and onto campus, I may have struggled. Even with the amount of hours that I was working, I think that I may have struggled. So yeah, definitely living at home. The amount of hours that work were giving me was a level of support. It was probably the only level of financial support as I was uneligible for Centrelink at that stage.
And why was that?
Mainly due to the amount of hours that I was working. I was earning too much money, but also the fact that I was living at home and was not considered independent, and Mum and Dad were earning too much money. So all of those factors made me ineligible.
So how important were your family then in terms of supporting your ambition? You said that your family didn't have a history of tertiary education experience.
It was, I think, for them at some stages it was a little bit hard because even to this day I don't think they fully grasp certain parts of university life or the university degree. I think they have been supportive, but I do think that they just struggled sometimes to pick up certain parts of university life, not going to university.
Right. And any particular examples that you think of?
Mainly to do with assignments and marks, I think. But also how assignments are marked as well. I think that's something that they may struggle to pick up.
Yeah. And did you find similar with your peers? Did your peers, your friends that you went through school with, did they come to university with you or elsewhere?
A lot of my school friends went to Sydney or Wollongong or Newcastle. So they may have taken the opportunity to leave. But at that stage I thought that the closest option was the best option.
Okay. Throughout the course, have you got any particular highs, achievements that you would like to talk about?
Definitely getting a distinction in your subject first year was very, 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 very good.
and it was very good for a first year student to get a distinction in their first semester.
But also marks along the way that have been better than average, have been little wins, little positives. As well as completing exchange in Canada was definitely a big win.
What did the exchange in Canada involve?
So it was quite a lengthy application process, which required interviews and also filling in forms. The university actually looked at academic marks, but I think it was through my involvement with the Australian Air League that I was picked, because I had practical experience outside of university level.
So it was partly based on academic performance, partly based on suitability for the program.
Yes.
Okay, and we might come back to a little bit more about the experience in Canada. In your first year, we actually put into place quite a number of supports that were funded by the federal government's higher education participation program, specifically aimed at the then government's goal of increasing the number of students from low socioeconomic backgrounds, from non-traditional backgrounds, so first in family background as in your case. And that was in recognition of those kinds of challenges that you mentioned, your parents not quite understanding the processes that were going on and how it was playing out. Can you recall anything in that first year that gave you that kind of support that you needed?
So we attended a set of sessions called the Study of Teaching program, which I think was a part of that support. Not a marked subject, just a set of sessions that we were required to go to. The one exercise that I can remember right off the top of my head was in reading picture books to children, which during that stage might have been a little bit silly to us, but we were actually prepared to go on prac that year and do the stuff that we had learned. Other stuff I can recall were even just something as simple as shaking hands with other teachers and principals. I think that might have been the first couple of sessions. Things like that we don't necessarily know.
So learning the communication styles and the discourse of the school setting. You mentioned picture books there, and you mentioned that the initial reaction was, as you say, reading a picture book, how hard can that be? Can you describe how your understanding of what appears to be a very simple process changed over that time?
It changed a lot, because it's not just reading the book in front of the kids, it's testing for comprehension as well, which obviously satisfies English outcomes. So it in itself is not just let's stop doing work time, it's an actual lesson within itself, reading the picture book, which was something that we'd learnt at that stage.
Yeah. Okay. And stepping out of that for a moment, we'll revisit some of those questions of supports. But for you in your personal journey, you've mentioned that you were switched on to teaching as a possibility through an experience of work experience. As you went through the course, when did you decide that teaching was for you?
I do not think that there was a point where I did not think teaching was at all for me.
Terrific.
There was not a stage where I want to change degrees. I know that there are other students that wish to change degrees quite often, but I don't think there was any stage where I did want to change.
Yeah. So that commitment to teaching must have provided you with some motivation, as you said, initially in the HSC, and then when you came to uni, some motivation to pursue that goal. Yeah, that's terrific. All right, so how does it feel when you're teaching? What does it feel like?
I feel very comfortable in teaching the kids, but also very enthusiastic. I think that I feel a certain amount of enthusiasm and excitement as well when I'm teaching the any sort of kids, but also a lot of happiness, because all of the work that's gone into that has made me feel those sorts of feelings while I've been on prac or teaching. So definitely good feelings, but also the making a difference. I know that's probably said often, but there are children out there where you are their main icon, their main role model. So I think that's a big feeling that I have as well.
Yeah. Okay. Role of a teacher. What do you see as the role of a teacher in a society?
Lots of roles. I go back to Canada. Obviously, a lot of people think it's just teaching the kids and looking after the kids, but in Canada, the age of the children in kindergarten, which was the prac class that I had, was 3 years old. As long as they turned 4 in December, you could put them in as a 3-year-old into kindergarten. And basic stuff like washing their hands, taking shoes off, putting shoes on, moving around the classroom. Simple little life skills are things that we need to be prepared to teach as well. Not necessarily with all the kids in the older years, but some kids you will.
So I've been teaching you and involved observing you from a distance, not just you, but the students, particularly from your cohort, because I had a role of a pastoral care role in that first year that you were here. And so you are a changed person, and we've talked about this previously. How do you think that completing a degree has changed you?
It's definitely made me realise the amount of work that does have to go into being a professional person, fulfilling a professional occupation. But besides that, it was also a part of life where I did experience things that made me a changed person, both inside and outside of university. And it was just basically a growing up phase.
And one of those changes was, as you mentioned before, going overseas on an exchange. You spent 6 months in Canada at our campus in Ontario, where you completed the course as it's presented over there, but with subjects that were able to link into your degree here. That in itself was life-changing. Can you talk about the professional aspects of that, first of all? How did that experience change you professionally?
The teaching culture and the school culture over in Canada is quite different. One thing that I can think about straight away is that most schools in Australia, or at least the schools I've been in Australia, have a school uniform, even if it's a polo shirt and a pair of shorts. But in Canada it's mufti all the time. And they even had a couple of days over there where they went into school in their pyjamas. And they dressed up for Halloween as well during a school day. Teachers, everybody.
Right.
So that particular cultural thing was something that I noticed, as well as other cultural things. But being able to take away those cultural things, I think makes or prepares me in becoming a better professional. Being able to teach in different settings and pick up certain cultural things within those different settings, I think would be beneficial for any teacher to pick up.
Yeah, okay. So an international experience gives you an experience of another culture, and we might think that Canada and Australia have similar colonial-based cultures, but clearly there's still things to learn. Okay. So personally it changed you as well. Would you like to talk about that?
Yes. So I was lucky enough to meet Hannah while I was in Canada, and she was one of the Canadian students completing the degree. And we were a bit different because I was still completing my undergrad, but she was doing the Canadian part, which was the postgrad. But we actually got placed in the same prac school. Getting put into that first couple of groups was how we actually met, which was in itself very, very lucky.
Apparently so.
But in the same prac school, we were actually able to work together on a professional level as well, which again links back to that cultural professional development
Of being a professional. Yeah. And what are your plans for the future then?
So my plan is to move back to Canada next year and become a teacher eventually. Maybe not straight away because there's hurdles, but eventually become a teacher
Teaching Canada.
in Ontario.
Oh, wonderful. All right. A hypothetical question for you, reflecting back on your journey. If you were to meet your 18-year-old self, 19-year-old self
Yes.
now,
Yes.
what kind of, or a person similar to that, from the same kind of background, same experiences, same challenges perhaps. What advice would you give yourself in hindsight? What would you say to that 19-year-old?
Definitely to travel, whether as soon as they could afford it, whether it be as a part of their university, as a part of an exchange, or after they've finished their degree during a professional setting. So I think there are international teacher exchanges in place with the department. So, or even just going away on holidays, because the things that you pick up from overseas, the particular discourses you pick up from overseas, cause certain developments within a person, I believe.
Yeah, I certainly do. And if you were to talk to that student about how to get on at university, how to pursue their goals successfully, are there any bits of wisdom that you could provide that 19-year-old?
I do think that a balance is definitely needed in regards to work life, but also a social, personal and university life. I do think that if they concentrate on one more than the other, then I do think that they would struggle.
And so you mentioned the Air League in there. You feel that was that your main outlet of personal time and interest?
It was, but it was also an opportunity for anything that I learned in university to try it in practice.
Yeah, right. In what way?
Mainly maybe classroom management items that I'd learnt to try them there. But also they have badges that they have to collect, and there is bookwork to do with those badges. So even basic practical stuff that was learnt at uni was put into practice at Air League in regards to teaching however many children. But even the stuff that we'd learned in regards to child development, or the child protection course that we do before our prac, those sorts of things helped me address the different socio-economic backgrounds that are at Air League.
Right. Okay. So they're transferable skills.
Yes.
People skills, I guess, management skills. Terrific. Okay. And finally, what advice would you give a university in supporting young 18, 19-year-olds like yourself coming to university? What kinds of things would you advise us?
I do think, I know not a lot of universities do it, but I think something like the STAR program that we did in first year.
Okay, which was again a specific program aimed at first generation, lower socioeconomic background families, and meeting the challenges.
So I think depending on the area, with that in mind, that would be a positive program to implement. Also maybe even some sort of financial support. I know that during internship there was no time to work.
So I guess the question there is, for you personally, had you have not worked,
Yes,
would you have been able to continue with studies?
it would have been very, very hard. So internship was the first time, because I was strongly advised to not work during that time, and I was very, very glad that I didn't work. Even if there was a system to be implemented in collaboration with the government and the university in regards to partial payment of students while they're completing the work, not sure if that's a possibility.
With some support. And you mentioned that your parents earned too much
Yes.
for you to qualify, and the fact that you lived at home. Do you think that, given that they didn't meet the benchmark in terms of funding for you,
Yes.
Would it have been possible, do you think, for them to fund you through university?
Well, I don't think so. Because the whole reason for that traineeship that I completed was to get funds to pay for fees.
So you had a goal right from the start. say you chose to take a year off
Yes.
from studies, not to travel, as we know
A lot of people do.
A lot of people travel. You chose, so I guess you saved rather than spent during that year.
Yes.
So that actually provided you with a cushion in a way to get you through as well.
Yes.
Uh-huh.
So my parents actually strongly recommended that I do that. Because one thing they didn't know about was the HEX system.
Mm-hmm.
They found out information about the HEX system, and they thought it would be a good idea to pay off my fees up front.
So you've been paying your fees?
Up until last year.
Wow. Okay. So you've worked to support yourself and planned for the future in reducing your HEX debt. That's fantastic. Okay. So now you're finished. Your parents must be incredibly proud of you being a first generation. As we often see at graduation, we often have first generation families very excited that they worked so hard to get their children into these opportunities. Have they said anything to you? Have they made any particular comments?
They are looking forward to graduation.
Good.
And I do think they are very, very proud, and they are very, very pleased. Because I think that they do know how much work has gone into it. And they do realise that it is a career that will set me up for my life.
And while I think of it, you did mention to me in the past you have a brother
Yes.
that is also finishing the high school certificate this year, or has?
At the moment,
At
yes.
the moment.
Yes.
Do you think he'll follow in your footsteps?
Coming to university, I think he's still deciding, but there are, well, CSU especially do have things in place that will make it easier for him to actually come to university.
Mm-hmm. Can you think of any of those in particular?
The things that helped me were the principal's recommendation, especially. So that actually got me a place at university before I received my ATAR mark.
So a relationship with the school, the university?
Yep.
Okay.
Which was quite a stress reliever. But also the 5-point regional buffer that the university gives to regional students of certain postcodes.
And that's in a recognition that statistically we know that students in rural areas don't achieve as higher ATARs due to various reasons, including the fact that the resources that are available to rural students are more limited.
The general understanding of students from country areas is something that I've noticed as well.
So being a rural institution makes it more achievable for rural students, you think?
I believe so. Even in comparing the ATAR marks to do with teaching from Sydney Uni to Charles Sturt, it is a more achievable mark. And I do believe that the Sydney unis do put their marks up because of the amount of people trying to get in. So I do also think it is a placement, reasons behind that, which also makes CSU, they are more open to people of different backgrounds.
Right.
And very supportive of them. Yes.
So you feel that the institution, being part of the rural community, understands the needs of rural students in various ways, yeah. Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Enjoyed our conversation. Look forward to seeing you at graduation. And thank you.